All right, let's get right into it. Today we're unpacking a fascinating philosophical allegory from a source text known as the third word. It gets right to the core of human choices, true freedom, and those hidden weights we literally carry around every single day. It's a thought experiment, but it's incredibly vivid and honestly just as relevant today as the day it was first conceptualized. If you're into decoding the structures that drive human behavior and finding the deeper meaning behind our daily grind, you are absolutely going to love this explainer. Okay, let's dive into this. Picture this. You're standing in front of two distinct paths stretching out ahead of you. And here's the kicker, they are the exact same length. One isn't magically a shortcut. The difference between them doesn't have anything to do with the ticking clock. The real difference is what waits for you at the end. And more importantly, what kind of weight you're choosing to strap to your back while you walk it. The physical stakes of this little thought experiment are actually going to reveal some pretty massive psychological truths. So, that brings us to part one, the two soldiers at the crossroads. The text sets up this really relatable narrative. We've got two soldiers setting out on a long, grueling journey to a distant city. Eventually, they hit a crossroads. You know, the classic universal symbol for choice and consequence. Well, standing right there at the fork, they meet a guide who gives them the complete rundown on the two routes. It goes like this. The right path is totally guaranteed to bring you no harm. In fact, people who take it usually find a lot of comfort and lasting profit. But, big catch here, you are required to carry a heavy backpack and a weapon at all times. No exceptions. Then, there's the left path. Now this one offers zero tangible benefits, but man, it seems so much easier. Why? Well, there's no dress code, no heavy bag to lug around, and no weapon required. It's basically a completely unburdened stroll. Or at least that's how it looks to the naked eye. Now, what's really interesting about this is how it transitions us into section 2, the key to the allegory, decoding the symbols. This marks our shift from a literal story about two traveling soldiers into a massive metaphorical reflection on human existence itself. Because, obviously, this isn't just about a hiking trip or a military deployment. Every single thing the guide mentioned is a symbol for something way bigger. The soldiers, they actually represent all of humanity. That's you, me, literally everyone we know. And that distant city they're trying to reach, that's the final destination of our existence. The road itself is the grand, sprawling timeline of human life. We start way back in the realm of souls, we hit the inevitable milestone of the grave, and we ultimately arrive at the afterlife. We are all walking this road every single day, advancing step by step, whether we actually stop to realize it or not. So what exactly does walking down these two completely different life paths signify for us in our day-to-day spiritual lives? Well, in the context of the allegory, the right path represents a life of obedience to divine laws. It's a structured, purposeful existence that aligns with a higher moral order. It's all about living with absolute intention. The left path, on the flip side, represents living totally aimlessly. It's the path of just following whatever the ego wants in the moment, chasing whims and impulses without any sort of overarching guiding framework. Which brings us to the actual physical burdens themselves. Remember, the guide said the right path requires a backpack. In our allegory, this heavy backpack actually represents worship, or ebadits as it's known in the original text. Now, let's be real for a second. Taking time out of a crazy busy schedule for devotion, that sounds exactly like adding a massive 50-pound weight to your back. But here is the critical realization. Just like a soldier keeps their rations in their pack, this backpack is exactly what spiritually feeds and nourishes the human soul. It's not just some heavy bag meant to slow you down. It is literally your essential survival kit for the journey. And then there's the weapon. In this framework, the weapon represents piety, or taqwa. I want to just pause here for a second to really let that metaphor sink in. A weapon is never actually a burden when you're walking through hostile, dangerous territory, right? It's your ultimate lifeline. Piety acts as this active, protective discipline. It constantly defends the human heart and mind from hidden harms, moral pitfalls, and the really destructive consequences of veering on to the wrong paths. Think of it as your shield and your sword against spiritual and psychological danger. And this brilliantly illustrates our next point, moving us into section 3, which is the true burden. This right here gets into the core psychological paradox of the paths we choose. Because, as we've seen, things are rarely what they seem on the surface, especially when we're talking about what's actually weighing us down. Just look at the illusion versus the reality. The traveler on the left path might take those first few unburdened steps and think, wow, I am so much lighter, I'm totally free. But what's the actual reality of that choice? Because they lack that inner structure of worship and that protective weapon of piety, they are completely exposed to the elements of life. They end up dependent on everyone else for validation, anxious about every little thing, and constantly fearful because they don't have a solid anchor. Now, look at the right path. Yeah, sure, the perceived feeling is that you're carrying this heavy burden of rules and routines. But the reality, you are deeply disciplined, and because of that intense discipline, your heart and soul are fully protected. The visible physical burden creates a light, secure, confident soul. Meanwhile, the path that looked so easy, it creates this crushing, invisible psychological burden of fear. Let's move into our final section here, choosing your own path. It is time to bring this historic allegory squarely into your 21st century life. Because honestly, we aren't just reading about some fictional soldiers here. We stand at this exact same crossroads every single morning when we wake up. I want to challenge you to look at your own daily choices through this specific framework. When you're making a decision, big or small, ask yourself, does this just seem easy in the short term? Is this shortcut actually making me more dependent on others or on fleeting desires? Will this unchecked freedom eventually lead to regret down the line? Does skipping the hard work leave my focus and my energy feeling completely scattered? We really have to train ourselves to recognize that not every easy path is safe, and not every discipline is just a heavy, restrictive burden. Quite often, true freedom is found right on the other side of structure. So the whole point is captured perfectly right here. Does this give me only momentary comfort, or does it truly protect me? I want you to treat this quote as a small, highly practical application test. Seriously, just keep it in your mental back pocket. The very next time you face a decision, whether that's about how you're spending your free time, how you react to a tough situation, or whether you stick to a meaningful daily habit, run it through this exact filter. Because the journey of life doesn't pause, and the roads are constantly diverging beneath our feet. As we've seen today, skipping the backpack and the weapon might feel like this exhilarating freedom at first, but it ultimately leaves us wandering, anxious, and dangerously unprotected. On the flip side, embracing the weight of purpose and discipline actively arms us against the unpredictable storms of life. Which leaves us with one final, essential question to really chew on as we wrap up this explainer. How do you know which path you are walking on right now? Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll leave you to reflect on that.